Okay, I just wanted to go over the code library that the Arduino environment comes with. I think it's real important. It's a real big selling point to me for the Arduino. When you go under File, you come down here to Examples, and you'll see these three groups here. And the first group is just example code that's very well categorized. For example, under digital, there's an example for debouncing a button, blinking. There's analog examples, doing analog in and out, doing a calibration routine. Very important when you're doing analog. With analog, you almost always have to do some sort of calibration. There's some control statements. This is the language, how to use arrays, how to do a for loop, how to do an if statement, how to do a switch case. So here's lots of useful code and just straight up examples on how to program. Here's how to do a bar graph on an LCD. And here's a whole bunch of stuff just showing you how to do strings, which is important because every language, even different flavors of C, have their own ways of doing strings, and Arduino's no different. So if you need to use a string, you'll probably get confused. Here's a good place to look at some examples. So here's a great place to look at example code. Now I'm going to skip down to the third stuff. The third stuff is the libraries of objects. This shows you example code to work with particular objects in the library. For example, the EEPROM, there is a library object that allows you that wrappers around all the messy code that you have to write to get data in and out of the EEPROM. And then it has some examples. So, for example, if we want to read the EEPROM, we click on this, and here's just a real quick example. Shows you the first thing you're going to have to do is link to that object, link to the library, and they're just going to do some telemetry with the USB. And what they're going to do is they're going to use that object that we link to. They're going to do a read method on it. They're going to read an address which we're going to increment on each loop. So we're going to actually loop through all 512 positions in the memory, and we're going to print it to the serial port. And I've got an Arduino hooked up right now, so all I have to do is hit upload, and that will compile the sketch, upload the sketch, and it's done. And we hit serial monitor, and I've got my USB connected, so this is the memory position, position 8, 9, 10, and this is what's in that memory position. And as you can see, doesn't always default to 255. Look at that first one. It's 105. So that's why you never trust defaults. You always set your defaults. Anyway, that's how shows you real quick how to do that. Now that middle group, this group here are libraries that you install. So these are the ones that I have personally installed into my environment. For example, I've got the PID. So here's examples on how to use the PID. So just click on that and it'll open an example code. Give you some verbiage here. You have to include the library. You have to. They set up some global variables. They instantiated the PID object, just like I did. Just like I showed in the other presentation. Then they had to do the setup. I'm going to go through this again, but one thing I could do is show you if we go to the libraries. Remember that structure we've got under the Arduino folder. You then would have a libraries folder, and you need to create that library, and then this is where you just copy and paste the folder that you download for that library. So like here's the PID. This is just a folder that was zipped up, and I just copied and pasted it in here, and we go in there, and there's the code. That's the C++ code for the object, and then here's those examples that showed up in the environment. So if I double click on that, there's the sketch right there. That's the sketch for Well, they call it a sketch. It's a program. That's an ism in the Arduino world. They don't call them programs. They call them sketches, and that's goes back to the the fact that they wanted this to be used by artists that wanted to put, you know, LEDs and servos into their artwork, so their artwork would, you know, move or do something besides, you know, just sitting there. So, and artists, you know, when they get started, they sketch, you know, so that's why they call it a sketch. Anyway, just wanted to add that. Any comments, please leave them below. Thanks.